right, welcome back to the show. We have Tracey Myers on the line. We'll get to her in just a moment. Sully, Bucky and Sully Stumper, trivia question of the week as it's known.
The Stumper.
Chicago Blackhawks have reached the conference finals 3 straight seasons. Since 2000, how many other NHL teams have accomplished this feat? And the answer is 2. Mike Babcock's Detroit Red Wings.
I should have known Ben wouldn't go with another 0 because he did that last time.
And the Kings. So Sabres, they got there back-to-back. You thought that was a feat. 3 straight years.
No, I'm
almost passes for a dynasty these
I
days,
want
so.
them to figure out this is our first female guest.
All right, let's bring on Tracey from Comcast Sports Chicago. Tracey Myers, St. Bonaventure grad. Sully, Tracey, how's it going? Thanks for coming on the show.
I thank you. I thank you for throwing St. Bonaventure in there. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Hey, listen, just in the first game, the two of us picked Chicago. I'm not sure what the odds are in Vegas or anything like that. Who's picking what, but I think Chicago's the easier pick in Buffalo because of the Kane factor. We tend to lean that way. Would you agree with that, Sully?
Yep.
They came out in game 1, and I didn't think that either team was overly rusty, maybe a little sloppy, but the Ducks put a pretty good hurting on them. What happened in the game?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I kind of agree in terms of lack of rust. I thought both teams were very much ready to go in terms of the speed factor, in terms of the energy. But both teams made their mistakes. The only difference is that the Ducks capitalized on the Blackhawks' mistakes, and the Blackhawks didn't do the same when the Ducks made mistakes. I mean, you look at that first period. The Ducks were having a real tough time handling the puck, and they talked about that today. If they do that again, the Blackhawks probably do get some of those goals. So I think that was the biggest difference, was that you had one team that realized, okay, these guys are making a lot of mistakes. We need to make something out of them, and they did, and that was the Ducks yesterday.
This Blackhawk team, going back to their first cup, they've often fallen behind in the first game of series or during series. Do you think that as a whole they need to have that kind of pressure put on them, and that they really respond well to that kind of adversity?
I think they've always, as long as I've been up here, they've responded to every situation. They got down 2-0 to St. Louis last year in the first round, and it was kind of the same thing. It wasn't that St. Louis dominated them. They just took advantage of opportunities when they came along. For the Blues last year, was in the waning minutes of those first 2 games. The Blackhawks made a mistake, and they capitalized. So, the good thing, if you're a Blackhawks fan, the thing about this team is that they don't panic. They've Patrick Sharp talked about it today. They've been on both sides of this coin, where they'll be up in a series like they were against Minnesota and they close the door right away, or like 2 years ago when they were behind to Detroit 3-1. And they kind of just temper themselves in terms of their emotions and say, okay, we're not out of it. We're not, we don't have an advantage here, but at the same time, we can get ourselves back into this. So there's no panic. There's no freaking out when they get behind. So, they knew this was going to be a test, and they got reminded of that yesterday.
You talk about, what you're talking about basically is the experience factor. Why is it Richard scores the other day, but he had not done much up to that point. Taves had played okay. He has another level in his game. Hossa hasn't done much. Why do you think that some of the veteran guys and some of their offensive guys, big offensive guys, have not been as productive?
Well, it's one of those things where you can look at it 2 ways. I mean, with Hossa, he doesn't have many goals, but he had 7 assists through the first 2 rounds, which isn't too bad, So, and you see what he does on both sides. It's fantastic. There's no doubt. I mean, Taves, I think you saw more of him in the first round. Not too bad in the last round. Patrick Kane was the guy who stood out the most in round 2, obviously. Right. I mean, he just was fantastic against Minnesota. So, I think it's one of those deals where Taves got started a lot sooner this year than he did 2 seasons ago. I think it took him till, the end of the Detroit series against Los Angeles before he really started to get going. I think it's just one of those deals where, especially with the Blackhawks top guys, if you're talking about Taves, you're talking about Hossa, they do so much on both sides of the puck that if the puck isn't going in for them, then you look at how good they are defensively. So there's no doubt, certainly they need those guys in this round. The further you go, the more you need your superstars. But If you look at the Blackhawks, I think they also need their secondary guys. Those are the guys who scored yesterday for Anaheim, and those are the guys who end up making a difference in the postseason.
Absolutely, and you look at the playoffs too, and yesterday it seemed to me, I don't know if they're talking about this in between games today, but it looked to me like Anaheim was more aggressive. They pushed Chicago around a little bit. Was there any talk of that and how Anaheim was just the more physical team in the first game?
Yeah, and we all figured that was going to be the Blackhawks haven't out-hit a team, and I don't know, since probably I was a child. I mean, this is just not their game to be overly physical. There's some guys who can be, but not a ton. So, that was going to be a factor coming in for the whole team, for the whole Blackhawks team, how they were going to handle that physicality, but even more so considering the Michael Rozabal injury, your top 4 defensemen are probably going to get a bulk of the work. Anaheim's going to look at those 4 and say, okay, hit them a little more if you can. Finish your checks on them more because they're already playing a ton of minutes. And if you can wear them down physically, too, then you're going to get that edge. So there's no doubt that was one of the big concerns coming into this is that you're going to have to be prepared for a very physical Ducks team because that's what they do.
What do they need to do to solve Frederik Andersen, who's playing at an all-world level? But even Dominic Hasek back in the day here with the Sabres, there came times where he would crack a little bit. What do they have to do?
Well, they need to get more traffic. They were pretty good yesterday, but I think they could have done a little bit more. And, there really weren't too many second chance opportunities. Maybe that's because they weren't there, or it could have also been because of he had pretty good rebound control, if I recall. But, and that's another thing that Sharp said is, the Ducks did a very good job at boxing the Blackhawks out and giving Freddie Andersen that space. And that's where I think they really need to, the physical nature and stuff like that, you're just going to have to shove right back because you need to get around that guy. All these goaltenders are big now and take up a lot of net. You got to take his eyes away or you have to shoot high on him and everything. And, if you can clear some of the Ducks out of the way and get into his space, then you're going to be able to do that.
And the game changes too. If Kane is able to bury that one in the first period, you don't know what happens after that. Andersen gets his stick on it. It's a different game. Tracey, do you have a prediction for us in the series?
You know what? I don't do predictions. I'm not I'm not somebody whoever does those. I usually go on a game-by-game basis, and I'm not even sure about this next game. It's one that the Blackhawks, I guess it's one that both teams would say they need to win. If you're the Ducks, you don't want to go back to Chicago with a 1-1 tie.
Right.
You can get a 2-0, But I won't be surprised if the Blackhawks win tomorrow because, like we were talking about earlier, they're very good at realizing, oh, okay, we've got a little issue here and we don't want to make it bigger. So, just considering how close they were the other day and if not for a couple errors, they're in much better shape. I think they respond tomorrow. Sounds good. Tracey Myers, everybody. Tracey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Sorry I had to badger you a little bit. We'll catch up again. Have fun in the series. And they're going to the Stanley Cup, Sully. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk Mike Babcock and more hockey. Sully's so excited. So stay with us here on the Bucky and Sully Show.